So Andrew, formerly known as Prince Andrew, may well be prosecuted. And a question for this video, is Keir Starmer defying the King's wishes? Both of those things I will address hopefully briefly for you in this Friday afternoon video, so please do subscribe if you like the content. And I've just realised that I have been designated 9th most mentioned individual for news on social and video networks in the UK. And this is by the Reuters Institute and the University of Oxford. So thank you very much to both of those. I will link that below. Go and have a look. I was quite pleased to find that. Somebody pointed that out to me. But as I mentioned, Andrew, I nearly said Prince Andrew then, Andrew may well be prosecuted for alleged offences. Why do I say that? Well, it's not by the CPS. It's on Crowdfunder. Somebody's already raised over £11,000 of a £50,000 target, and they say that they've instructed lawyers to pursue a private prosecution against Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, formerly Prince Andrew. If you haven't caught up with that yet, he's been stripped of the titles, but there's also a little bit of to do with the government. I'll come back to that in just a minute. Now, many people might say, well, how can anyone prosecute somebody? If you're not familiar with that, anybody can bring a prosecution. Interesting fact, we sometimes refer to civil cases as a prosecution. You prosecute a civil case, but that's not used so much anymore. Prosecution is now usually reserved for criminal cases. So anyone can bring a private prosecution. What you do is you lay an information is the original term, or you apply for a summons at the magistrate's court to say that somebody should be brought to court and prosecuted for an alleged offence. The magistrate's court will decide if there's sufficient evidence to grant that and to pursue this case. And this is what they say here. They say they are seeking accountability by bringing a private prosecution against Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, formerly Prince Andrew. They say this is by Republic. Nothing to do with me, by the way. This is completely independent and it's not supported. They've not asked me to do this or anything of the sort, either by Crowdfunder or by Republic. I've just found it and I'm talking to you about it for an interesting point of law. They say that this is about equality and justice. They say, we've been calling for the police to investigate Andrew. We've been calling for the government to convene a Royal Epstein inquiry. They say neither has acted, so if they won't take action, we will. They say Republic has taken the unprecedented step of instructing a law firm to launch a private prosecution. Lawyers will be actively investigating the case against Andrew with a view to beginning proceedings in the coming weeks. Donate today. This is not me telling you you should or should not support it. I'm just telling you about it because I think it's an interesting point. And so an interesting point about private prosecutions, they run very much like an ordinary prosecution by the CPS, but it's much more common than you think. So companies very often will bring their own private prosecutions. So couriers are well known for it, such as Royal Mail, or other companies will often prosecute people for either interference with mail offences or stealing the mail and these kind of things. In couriers, they might be people acting like espionage, stealing data, selling it onto other couriers, or stealing the parcels because they know what's being transported. It's of value, so they steal those. And it is run as a normal prosecution, and all of the same things apply. So they'll have to have the biggest issue with a private prosecution is the disclosure aspect. It's a very in-depth process where someone has to go through in great detail all of the disclosure element. Disclosure starts with telling them that a piece of evidence exists and then providing it to them, etc. And in a criminal case, the test for disclosure is very broad and it's an ongoing duty. And so whoever is bringing the prosecution, even if it's a private one, there is a duty on the prosecutor who should ideally have a designated disclosure officer. There is an ongoing duty to disclose anything throughout that case. So it's an ongoing duty, so anything that is reasonably capable of undermining the prosecution or assisting the defence is supposed to be provided. So this is a very in-depth process, and many companies use a private prosecution to achieve justice. So I thought this was interesting because it does answer the question to a degree as to some people saying, why is he not being prosecuted? Well, he might be. This has now likely produced sufficient funds to at least take the first steps towards a private prosecution. But now on to the second question. Is Keir Starmer acting against the King's wishes? Now, I read here from the Telegraph because obviously the King has made this decision to strip him of all titles. but interestingly also so that he's no longer known as prince. Because this is a frequent question. A lot of people ask, if royalty have their titles removed, do they remove also the prince bit? Now, in this case, the king has decided to remove Prince from the Prince Andrew, so he's now known as Andrew. But then the obvious question is, if he's removed as a prince, is he removed from the line of succession? Well, the answer is no, not automatically, because it is not an automatic process to remove someone from the line of succession, because we have what we refer to as the Act of Settlement of 1701, and also the Succession to the Crown Act 2013, which made certain changes to it. But moving back to this, it is not an automatic removal from the line of succession. So it would require an Act of Parliament to actually change the line of succession. So here, reportedly, the government, i.e. Keir Starmer and his government, is refusing to change the law to remove Andrew from the line of succession. Even though MPs across multiple parties, including a Labour minister, have backed the new legislation that would prevent him from ever becoming king. Now, you might reasonably ask the question, if he's had all of his titles, including prince, stripped, you must ask the question, do they have enough information to really strongly suspect that he is guilty of some kind of offence or other? Or is it merely just the scandal that is constantly chipping away at the reputation of the royal family? Well, you make of that what you will, but there are a number of MPs across parties that support a new law that would remove him from the line of succession to prevent him from ever becoming king. However, a number 10 spokesperson said, there are no plans. The government is committed to using parliamentary time to improve the lives of working people. Asked if the government would seek to block a private member's bill, which is just one of the ways of a bill being introduced into Parliament, they said, well, there are no plans to make legislative changes. Obviously, the provisions for MPs to put forward legislation are well established. Those decisions would be for MPs and Parliament. So that is a hint to say, well, if a member of Parliament brings a private bill, then they might just knock it back or do what they can to knock it back. Despite having been stripped of his royal titles, Andrew is still 8th in line to the throne. An Act of Parliament would need to be introduced to change this, and in addition, and here's another point which might be quite difficult, in addition to the consent from all 14 Commonwealth countries. The view in Downing Street is that it is so unlikely that he'll ever become king that the law doesn't need changing. But as I've recently discussed with a few people, sometimes principles are everything. And to a lot of people, that might feel aggrieved, for example, of him not being removed from the line of succession, they might feel that the principle is absolutely everything. And a lot of people might believe that whatever it costs and however long it takes, this is something that we should do. If we've taken that line to remove all the titles, remove him as a prince, then that's what we should do. On the other hand, there are people that think Andrew is being treated unfairly and say that, the principle of being innocent until proven guilty and so on and so forth, they say that this makes him look guilty without ever having been proved guilty. So this is a very difficult situation, but it might all change if he's actually prosecuted. So this indeed is an unfolding thing, but also just touching on the Rachel Reeves situation from yesterday as well. The whole innocent until proven guilty thing, and that requires investigation. Now, for Keir Starmer to say that there is no investigation in his first letter, and then to reveal that there were emails that contradicted what she said, and then another letter from her to say, well, actually, it was the agent's fault and so on. And in my secrets video, my Black Belt Secrets video I've done today, I give you a great example as to why a lot of people might be upset about this Rachel Reeves thing not being just a simple mistake, when it's cost other landlords £60,000 or £100,000 for precisely the same thing. I'll link that video below. Go and check it out. Let me know what you think about this Andrew being prosecuted thing, whether you think that's fair, whether you think it's right that at least he's brought to court to be prosecuted, to see whether or not these allegations that he denies have any weight. Let me know what you think about that, and hopefully that clears up why it's not just automatic. There is a process that has to go through, and it would have to go through the whole parliamentary process, i.e. both houses of parliament and the parliamentary ping pong, royal assent, ironically enough, before it becomes law, to actually change the line of succession. But I hope you found that interesting. Please do like and share the video and all that sort of stuff. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you in the next one.